All right. Hey, it's good to see you, man. Welcome to another episode of OTXNT. You guys who are tuning in, we are changing course. We usually film on a different day, but we're filming today because Andrew's going to do some reporting for us of what happened in New Orleans at the Southern Baptist Convention's annual meeting last week. So, man, Andrew, I heard a lot on Twitter. I was watching some of the live feed stuff, read a lot of the Baptist Press articles. So I kind of have a feeling like I know a little bit of what was going on, but I really want to hear you. You were there on the ground, kind of all of that. So looking forward to you kind of talking us through, what I know that I've had church people want to know, what's happened, what's taken place, and where we are. So I'm looking forward to kind of just working on that with you today and just talking through it.
Yeah.
So you ready to start?
I'm ready. I'm excited. It's fun because the convention is actually really a good time. What gets out to the churches or the main populace usually is only the negative stuff, but there's a lot of good things that happen. And so I'm excited to talk about it. Let's go ahead and jump into the Lord's Prayer, and then we'll dive into just kind of a review of last week.
Let's do it.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever. Amen.
Amen.
All right.
So talk me through it, man. What's your general sense of things right now?
So I think generally for most Southern Baptists, nothing's changed in your church. We're local congregations. I talked to my church on Sunday if there was any questions people had. People didn't even know what happened. A lot of our Southern Baptists in our pews are not that politically engaged in the SBC. We just love the fact that through our cooperation, we can send missionaries and plant churches and do good things for the kingdom. And that's the first thing I thought that was really great, is that we commissioned 79 new missionaries for the International Mission Board to serve in 33 different countries. And so that's super exciting. I mean, this is getting the gospel to the ends of the earth. This is commissioning missionaries who will have a paycheck that they don't have to go fundraise. They're going to have an opportunity.
They're fully funded. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and of course, you grew up a child of a missionary, so you kind of have a firsthand experience of the difference maybe of being a missionary with the Southern Baptists and with another group. But it's exciting to know that we're taking care of our missionaries. The North American Mission Board, if I'm reading the report correctly, I saw 745 new church plants, and we're looking to have over 10,000 by 2030. Or since 2030, from 2010 to 2030. I might be off on that report, but man, hang on one second. I'm pausing.
Yeah.
Are you still there?
Yeah.
I hate when I get fuzzy here. I lost my my stuff. Yeah. So the class of 2022 was 745 new church plants. We're looking to have 10,000 church plants now since 2010, since we started this initiative. And there's debate on whether it's the most effective initiative, but the reality is 10,000 new churches started since 2010 is a fantastic number in North America. Mm-hmm. And so, this is exciting. This is why we give money to the cooperative program. So that was exciting. The seminary reports were great. There's been a lot of concern about Southwestern with transition that they've had a couple transitions. And so they brought David Dockery in as
for
president.
Those of you who are listening, Southwestern is our seminary, one of our 6 Southern Baptist seminaries supported by the convention that's in Fort Worth, Texas. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, no, thanks. Just trying to get through some of this early stuff quick here. There's been some concern about enrollment and about what's going on with transition. David Dockery is just a fabulous Christian leader in higher education, and he's just it's exciting to see him step into that role, because I think he's the right man for the job to just kind of level things out and put Southwestern back on a good course. And he gave his first report as president of Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. So you and I think have had him in plenary sessions in our PhD work. So it was fun to see. We
like him. And if you're somebody in Tennessee and you've ever been connected to Union, he made a huge mark there when he was president of the Union. So that's a good guy to have in that role. I thought when they picked Dockery to be the new president, it was a good choice on their part for sure.
Yeah. So So I think generally this is the stuff people join the convention for, right? We want to
Yeah.
promote Christian education. We want to promote ethics. There was a report from Ethics and Liberty, but the missions and starting churches and reaching the lost, that's still happening in the SBC, and it's happening in a great way. The more controversial subjects that I'm sure people are interested in are what happened to Saddleback Church.
Yeah.
Saddleback and Fern Creek Baptist churches were removed from the convention. They were viewed as not being in friendly cooperation. That's the official language by our executive committee. They appealed that decision, and that came to the floor. And both the pastor, a lady of Fern Creek, and Pastor Rick Warren were able to present their position in 3 minutes. And then there was a rebuttal for 3 minutes, and then it went to a vote. So those that were engaged in this, that were going, we were looking at this before, because 3 minutes isn't a lot of time. And close to 90% of the convention agreed with the executive committee and has affirmed the disfellowshipping or viewing these churches not in friendly cooperation with the convention. And so Saddleback and Fern Creek are not part of the National Southern Baptist Convention.
Well, and if you watch the previous videos that we did leading up to this, you'll see kind of what the issues there. But here's the deal: they had 3 minutes to appeal, but they've had months where they've gotten word out and talked through their positions. And you were saying even Saddleback, right? They had a website, they had pamphlets they were handing out to people, right? That were there on the ground with all of that. So it's not like the 3 minutes, this is your one shot. They've had a long time. And Rick has a pretty massive microphone that he has been able to use for his case. So up to this point, so it's not like people were not aware. This stuff was the big stuff from last year that was unfinished to be brought to this year's floor. I will say that the number was shocking to me of the percent that voted against. I was not sure, just because I felt like, I don't know, man. I remember in Anaheim, I just didn't feel like, I don't know. I didn't feel like, I wasn't sure when we left, right? What I was sure of is why we are Southern Baptists for cooperating, but I wasn't sure of how much we seem to be on the same page with each other. And this 90% almost across the board for affirming those decisions, that was pretty shocking to me to see, shocking in a good way, I would say, to just see that there is still a kind of shared convictions about what certain things mean and what we're all about as Baptists in terms of at least the Baptist faith and message part.
Yeah, and again, please look at those videos if you want more background. But basically, the concerns, it's always hard to take the step and remove. The fact that the SBC had already removed them based upon examination, it made it easier to say, do we trust our leadership or not? And so I think that helped bring the vote tally higher. And then Rick Warren also, through Twitter and trying to present his position was not always effective, maybe even a little confrontational. He actually did start his own website called SBC Stand, where he made videos and shared documents. And his larger case was, I've kind of moved into the egalitarian camp. I believe men and women can serve equally in any role in the church. So a woman can be the senior pastor. And so that's kind of a lot further than most of us have gotten. There's a number of people who are probably still conservative who think that a woman might be able to be the pastor of a children's ministry under a senior pastor. I don't hold that position, but there are those that do. And so that's kind of the position that I initially thought that Rick Warren was going to take. And he's gone all the way over to the egalitarian position. And his position was the SBC is a voluntary, association where we give money for missions. This shouldn't be a deal breaker. And what was determined by the convention messengers was, yes, that is a deal breaker. That's too essential to who we are. To say that it's non-negotiable and churches can have women pastors, senior pastors, or not.
Yeah, well, I mean, the position that we assumed that he was, and he just, like you said, he came out and said he's egalitarian. The position we were going to think was some sort of what we would call maybe a soft complementarianism, where we would recognize like there's certain biblical passages that talk about the authority of the pastorate and the teacher preacher that needs to be. God has affirmed that to be a man. And what a soft complementarian would say is, so you have the senior pastor, the primary teacher preacher, he's over that But beyond, under that, you can have, a children's women's pastor, a women's pastor, even youth pastor kind of thing. And then you have maybe a harder complementarianism, which say how where I think it's kind of walked me through a lot of this in terms of how we use that term pastor at all. I'm not comfortable just throwing it out. Want to be very limited in how we use the term pastor, elder, overseer, which is connected to some other stuff that we'll talk about in a bit. I think that's an interesting thing that to where they affirmed at least. What else did you notice in that in that conversation?
So again, there was drama. I mean, there was a press conference following the decision where Rick Warren essentially kind of said that I stood up for those churches because this decision can't hurt me, but I feel like it's going to hurt the convention. And he believes he took on a noble cause. The drama in the moment was that the pastor of Fern Creek, she gave her position, and Al Mohler gave the rebuttal, and then Rick Warren gave his position, and Al Mohler gave the rebuttal, and Rick saw that was going to happen. He says, "I don't know why Al Mohler gets to be here twice. He seems to be the guy everyone's looking to for definition of the Baptist faith and message because he was on the committee." And Rick Warren says, "I contacted 7 other members that seemed to disagree with Al Mohler." And Al Mohler's response was pretty classic. He kind of said, didn't get caught up into that, and said, "It's not for me to determine what the Baptist faith and message means. It's for the messengers." And he was confident that the messengers were not in agreement with Rick Warren's position, and the vote showed that they were not. And so this is not, secondary and primary issues are kind of things that people throw around. The primary issues are salvific issues that defend the faith once received. But there's a lot of secondary issues that churches divide on, infant baptism being one of them. The Presbyterians and the Baptists agree on a lot of things, but we don't baptize infants. That is a large enough secondary issue that we divide denominationally over that. And so Rick Warren has reached a point where we've now divided over this issue, but I wish Saddleback well. I personally think that their view is in error, but that's why I'm part of the Southern Baptist Convention. And so God has used Saddleback in powerful ways, and there's been good partnerships with the Southern Baptist Convention and associational and state levels. And I don't wish to see things collapse in that way, and I hope that God will continue to use them. But this is why we have the nomination, so that when we send a missionary, we know what our missionaries agree to and what doctrinal things they'll be teaching, and so that's an important piece. When
we plant churches, those 745, there are certain standards of what are we giving our money towards, right? What is the message that we're wanting to say that this is important to us, right? So that's a big deal. One thing I will say this, I think it's for another time, another video, and I'd love to get a guest on from maybe somebody who was involved early in maybe the conservative resurgence as well, is just the importance of Baptist faith and message. Because one thing that was thrown around a lot is we're not a creedal people. Baptists are not, but we have this Baptist faith and message, almost as if people are saying it's irrelevant if you believe it or not. What really matters is we cooperate for the gospel and for gospel causes. And like, that's about as loose as, like, truth be told, in terms of like certain organizations, that would fit, like Gospel Coalition to some extent. You have to be slightly reform bent on that. But like, for the most part, you've got a lot of different churches focused on kind of one thing, and there's a big tent, right? But are we a confessional creedal people? And I would say yes, though. Like, there's a reason why we have a Baptist faith and message. These are the things that we confess. And we confess them because we believe they are clear teachings from the scriptures. And we don't want to lose sight of those, that we think they matter, and we think they matter. But I will say this: even on secondary issues, though, it does matter. It's not that, and I think rightfully so. You can say that it's not. We don't see you as non-believers, but we don't align together. It is a real tension, even in our own churches, right? When you get somebody who comes from maybe an Anglican or a Presbyterian background, And what does it mean to bring them into membership, right? One of the big questions that we ask is, have you been baptized by immersion?
Yeah.
People would say, well, that really doesn't matter, right? Because they believe just like us. But no, it does mean something to Baptists, right? That we don't believe in paedobaptism. And so we make a part. And I will say that others on the other end would say you Baptists are being too strict with this. I know in the paedobaptism camp, they would gladly welcome us in. However, there'd be things that they would have us believe, in terms of how they believe of the sacraments or things like that. But anyways, I'm getting ahead of that. There should be some meaning behind what it is that we confess. And I don't think we should be loosey-goosey on, I like Baptist faith and message, but not everything. And so I think, that those words mean something. And if you don't believe those anymore, then it's time to exit and find a group that does,
Now, and again, it really would be fun to spend a whole hour just going through this issue. But one of the things that Rick Warren brought up is in 2015, I thought it was related to the Credentials Committee. I made a mistake in a previous video. 2015, there was a amendment giving the Credentials Committee the ability to disfellowship a church. And it was driven largely by the concern of the LGBTQ movement and what happens if churches start affirming that. And so it was, that's what Rick Warren was saying is the problem is we actually gave the authority to the executive committee to disfellowship churches at the national level when it had been an activity of the association prior. And so he thought that was the slippery slope. And without that amendment, there wouldn't be a vehicle for the National Convention to do this. And so he thinks that's where we've gone astray. And he intends to stay in the local California Association. He intends to stay in the state convention. And so this is a problem because what happens now when you disfellowship at all these different levels, because we have an autonomous church and autonomous spheres of cooperation. So we'll have to see how that all plays out. But the other thing that came about is if there's 1,000 churches out there that have some sort of women's pastor, are we going to start disfellowshipping all of these every year now and continue to have this kind of a thing tearing us apart? I think hopefully most churches will act with integrity, seeing where the Southern Baptist Convention stands on this, and will exit if they disagree, and maybe form a new denomination, a great denomination that can do work with people that are in agreement on this issue. So the messengers represented here, though, there was no question. It was decidedly a convention that was saying that we believe the pastorate is a male office as qualified by Scripture, and that goes to what else took place. So are you ready to move on, or you want to say anything else about it?
I think that's a good one. We can leave that there. I will say this, that there was some discussion over personality that was being addressed there, and that there was probably a losing battle when you start to attack members up there on the platform, or even somebody like an Al Mohler. For those of you who are watching this who don't know about Al Mohler, who's president of Southern Seminary in Louisville, Al Mohler is an intellectual just giant, and I think he has been responsible for helping keep theologically, a lot of things together, and helping Christians think through a lot. And so I think when you kind of have to go against someone like that, it's a pretty tough case to make. Because there are very few people who I think could actually go toe-to-toe with a guy like an Al Mohler like that. But when you also kind of have a dismissal of him in your conversation, that I think kind of also seals it. But I think so. Granted, I think there was part of some of that was playing out as just people kind of sick of that piece. But I think across the board, based on some of the other things that happened, it does show that we skew a lot more heavily towards a complementarian approach and understanding of scriptures than some people who have been trying to make us to be. So anyways, that's all I want to say on that.
Yeah, I think, again, in 1984, we passed a resolution saying that only men should be pastors. and this goes back a while ago. That was embedded in our confessional document in 2000, and it was reaffirmed today. Or this last week. So those are the things that we haven't moved on this issue, and the culture's moved hard. And so this seems shocking. I've already seen a lot of stories putting us in a bad light. We're not saying that women aren't intellectually capable or even maybe smarter than the men that are leading in the churches. What we're saying is that God has established roles for male and female, and that he's the one that restricted this per numerous biblical passages. And so if you disagree, then don't cause division in here, because you're going to cause a lot of division if we aren't clear on this issue. So, but anyway, the big thing then that was on the table was an amendment to the bylaws, the Constitution and bylaws. It was proposed by Mike Law, and this amendment was to change the language of the Constitution, or add a statement to our composition that would state that a Southern Baptist church does not employ a pastor, a woman as a pastor of any kind. And that came to the floor, and it was there was a friendly amendment to that amendment that changed the language more to a positive phrasing. And the phrasing then states that the Southern Baptist employs pastors and elders, a male only pastorship and eldership. And so it's same thing basically, but it stated more positively rather than negatively. And it did bring the word elder into play there as well. So that came to the floor. Now that requires a 2/3 majority to pass.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a constitutional change. So there's people who would be in favor of that. I actually was listening to, I think, Wretched Radio. He was saying that 20% of Baptists are still not sure about this issue, and that's a problem for us. And I think that doesn't bring into account the reality of, I'm not normally in favor of a constitutional change. So even if I'm in favor of what it's for, going that deep into our documents it just causes pause. So some people vote against those things not because they're not in favor of the language. They just think that that's unnecessary. And the executive committee brought this to the floor against it. So that's the other thing. The executive committee actually gave this a negative referral, asking Baptist messengers to reject this amendment because they thought it was redundant. It was already stated in our Baptist Faith and Message. In fact, we had acted upon our Baptist Faith and Message already to exclude these two churches. And then the amendment came through, and it passed with over 2/3 of the messengers voting for it. Now it has to be voted on again next year in order to actually change our Constitution. But that just lets you know that the Southern Baptists see this now as a real issue, and they want to take whatever measures that are necessary to be very clear on what we view in terms of the office of the pastor as male only. So that kind of surprised me. I thought that one would fail.
Yeah. There was no clue. I think all of us thought that this was the death knell, the death knell that was going to happen, putting it to the floor like this, and then not wanting it too, from the executive committee. So shocking on that. So tell me about the vote though on this. How did that vote work on this one?
So this one was for the specific churches. We actually had to do written ballot, submit it, and they counted. For this vote, we actually did a show of the ballots, which there are people, of course, saying, I don't think that was 2/3. If you had a view of the whole thing, if it had been close enough to then push it to a written ballot, they would have. It was enough to clearly state that 2/3 of the churches want this amendment. Now, will that hold next year in Indianapolis? We'll have to see. But the man who spoke against it was interesting. And he said, Baptists, my fellow Baptists, we have gotten rid of all the liberals, and there's no one left to fight with but ourselves. And please don't do this. We don't want a woman who's actually doing the work of a pastor not to be able to be called what she's doing, working with children or ministers. And this is just going to create even more problems and cause more churches maybe to leave the convention. Yeah. And it's because it's almost an anti-complementarian view in some sense. I don't think it is. It's just saying that, hey, pastor means pastor, elder means elder, overseer means overseer. And we are going to, if you're going to be a Southern Baptist and you have a woman who is serving or shepherding a women's Bible study, just call her something else. We just don't want any fuzziness to happen. Yeah. And what I noticed going into this is that there were a lot of people who were trying to separate the Ephesians 4 he gave to the church teachers and pastors and the like from Timothy 2. And trying to essentially say that the pastoring gift, and Rick Warren actually made this case in the press conference, that pastoring as those given to the church as a gift, that is the only time that word's really used in that context. And so that is something different than being the overseer of the church. Of course, there was already a resolution that had passed stating that we recognize pastor, overseer, and elder are the same office. Yeah. And this is not new. We've affirmed this before. And so the argument here to basically say that you can call a children's minister pastor seems to be based in this idea that those are separate, that the elder overseer is actually maybe different than the pastor in those contexts. And I think what Baptists are saying, call them something else. We want to reserve the language pastor, elder, overseer for the office of the pastor.
Yeah.
And that office entails a male leadership. So if you've got an idea that this isn't an office, but this is a serving role, call them minister, call them director, call them something else. We want to reserve specific language for a specific purpose.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I think this whole thing, especially last year, I think has gotten a lot of people to think this one through, right? Is have we as Baptists been too loose with language of pastor? And I think we have. I think that's something that at least we should be not. I don't want us to come from this position of saying I'm reacting because what I don't like about what other churches are doing, but I should dig in to the scriptures and say, what do I see? One thing that has really pushed me is just coming here and where we're at and really beginning to do a lot of the work into looking into teaching on and explaining and understanding what is the role of an elder and an overseer, pastor. Are they the same? Who gets to be called this? What are their qualifications? And those are things that I think really should force you to look at what do we title things here in the church. And yeah, I think in the past, even myself, I think I've been too loose with just allowing that term pastor, not really knowing, is there a distinction that we should make between those? So I think that's an understandable thing that has needed to be done. And so language matters. What we call things matter. And that's been really one of the things I think will tie into where we want to go from here, which is something that was brought up at the last meeting, the one in Anaheim, which Adam Greenway, who is the current president of Southwestern Seminary, said, we should, instead of dealing with this issue now, should start a study team to go and to deal with what does it mean to be in friendly cooperation. Now, the floor had said, we should do a study team to know what pastor means. And the church said, and Al Mohler helped lead that one. And he was the one who said, we were in that room when we did Baptist Faith and Message 2000. We're not doing this, right? We already know what that means. That resolution, though, was pushed away. And then that popped up again right after we had voted to amend the bylaws saying, okay, this is where we're headed. And we want to do this next year, seal the deal. Then we have the motion that came forward. And so what was that motion this go around in New Orleans?
Yeah, and so it was proposed by Pastor Merritt, and it is proposing a task force to study how the convention should regard churches as in friendly cooperation. And so I was looking for the actual text. It's kind of funny that I'm having a hard time finding the actual text of it. But the idea is that we do want a study group. They wanted it appointed by the president, who Barbara did win a second term, and have this have this study group look at what it is. Now, again, I think it was rejected in Anaheim. You do get a little bit of a mob thing going on sometimes. And I think that's kind of dangerous, and why you don't want all your business handled from the floor. But the thing was rejected last year because I think everyone looked at this as a way of trying to not address the issue at hand, which was Saddleback has very publicly ordained women elders in contrast against our confessional documents. And so I think it was rejected by Greenway last year, and it was brought in this year because there is a concern that we don't want a large part of our annual meeting to be continually ousting churches.
Yeah.
And so where is the measure of grace? Because our Baptist Faith Message says that you have to be generally in agreement with it. It doesn't say that it's perfect agreement. And Rick Warren made that case pretty well, that again, where is the leeway? And it has been kind of left into the best intentions of the churches. So we haven't been wanting to exercise this level of authority at the highest level possible. Again, the idea would be that the local associations would be dealing with this, because that's where you have a closer connection with the churches. So I think that's what's driving this. And now that we had kind of stated very clearly, both with an amendment to the Constitution, the first pass, second vote still needed, and with the exclusion of the churches that are violating our confessional statements, I think now the messengers were open to say, fine, if the leadership wants this kind of a committee to clarify what this means, then let's go ahead and do that. So some people look at this as a poison pill, that this is going to actually give a free pass to churches that disagree with our confessional documents to just disagree, and we can bring them, all the churches, back in.
Yeah.
I don't think the messengers will approve that based on what we saw this last year, but even you and I said it would help to have some clarity on what we mean by this. I think the cleanest thing, though, is to probably not to get so precise that you get to a point where unless it's mentioned exactly in every way, that then churches can get around other issues. So the danger, even with the constitutional amendment, is like, if it is redundant and you put it in the Constitution, can someone come back later and say, well, it's not in the Constitution, so it's not that big of an issue? And they might disagree with a different part of the Baptist faith message and say, well, unless it's enshrined in the Constitution, it's not that important.
Yeah.
So yeah, when you have to bring everything into that level of clarity, you leave room for the legalese kind of stuff to get around it in other ways. So anyway, I voted against this because I don't think that it needs that much clarity. I don't know how you get there, I guess, is the concern. There was an amendment offered to this task force asking that they would designate Al Mohler as the chairman of the committee, and that then there would be a certain number of seats on it, and that was defeated. Most of the convention is pretty happy with Barber, our president. There's a lot of people who don't think that he's conservative enough.
Yeah.
And then there's some people that just felt like Stone had been cheated of his election because of shenanigans in 2019. Regardless of where you look at those types of things, most people are pretty happy with Barber. And so the rebuttal to the amendment is, we just elected this man, 66%. Pretty strong affirmation. Do we not trust him to put together a fair committee?
Yeah. And I will say that real quick. A lot of people were saying, oh, this is why we had no chance. I was listening to people saying that, it's weird because Barber's still president. But generally speaking, right, most SBC presidents get 2 terms. Ed Litton probably was not going to get a second term last year at Anaheim. There was way too much controversy for him in terms of just his abilities, and that's sad. But there was too much that was going on. Barber has not. He's been more of a middle of the road kind of a guy, and he's not really. He's not had that much controversy around him, and so generally speaking, if you're decent president, you're going to get 2 years. And so, and you'll see that even in our local conventions, right? You typically don't even run a guy in the second year because it's kind of just a formality. Just give him the second year. And so to me, that wasn't that shocking that there was that issue that he would have not gone that, because I think a lot of people saying there was not enough about him that would give us reason to doubt him at this point. So, but I have some thoughts on this merit amendment, though. When you're ready, though, to look at.
Well, again, it was. I'm trying to. I gave the context of the rebuttals. So the amendment failed. They trust Barber to appoint the committee. It was brought to the committee. And again, sometimes just the way the flow of this goes. So everybody's like, no, we do like Barber, and therefore we trust Barber, and therefore, we ought to trust this amendment. So you get that kind of thing. It passed without any issue. It was a pretty strong pass. And again, we don't want to see our convention turn into a whole day of removing churches, right? So I think there's a hunger here of, we want to be really clear on this issue. At the same time, we would rather not have this argument in place forever as well. How much of the confessional document do I have to retain in order to stay in? And so I don't think this is a bad committee if run well. And I hope that President Barber will put together a good balanced committee, some good names maybe from the different groups of the convention, and maybe we can get to clarity. And I think it would be also helpful to say that at the end of the day, maybe there is no recommendation. Maybe we just think that what's in the Baptist faith message is good enough, and we leave it up to the Credentials and Executive Committee to examine specific churches as needed. So it doesn't even mean you have to change what we're already doing. But if you have a really solid group looking at it, I think that most Baptists trust our leadership at least to do that well. We could be wrong, but I'm with the group that thinks that this is not a poison pill. It could become one, but I think that the group that is not happy with the direction that this convention showed the SBC is in and headed towards, was perhaps surprised by the overwhelming support for a male-only pastorship. And so I can't imagine that disappears in a year in Indianapolis. So
yeah,
go ahead. Yeah.
So that'll be interesting, right? So if we vote in Indiana to affirm the amendment, that's set, and that's going to be a pretty hard thing to have to undo after you give this this study team coming out saying here's what we want to do. One thing I think is okay. So I think the big thing that's happening is some felt like, from what I was gathering when this was happening, is that some felt like there was some shenanigans going on. That only one side was able to hear what was going on. In fact, that some speculated that this was always going to be the where they wanted to take this. That we were hoping that, when I say we, that the guys at the top were hoping that the law amendment would not go through, and then we would just have a law amendment is the one that we just said with the bylaws of defining that only a man can be a pastor, elder, overseer in Southern Baptist Convention. That this would be the one that could be that one, as you had said. The one thing I think, so not only were some people saying there's some shenanigans going on with microphones, and you were there, you had said to me, right, that this stuff happens. You can't really 100% make a case to say that was really what was going on, right? It did not seem like a conspiracy. Right.
Right. I mean, there were those, it was weird. The mics kept failing and they had to go to handhelds, and that reduced the number of lines that you had. So, I mean, I don't put it past, again, these things are political. It's not always pretty. And so I don't put it past some individuals to use an issue like this to say it was out of our control, but it hampered debate on an issue. Or the mics that failed happened to be mics where we saw people in line that we didn't want to speak. I don't believe that. I would hope that our folks are above that, and maybe I'm just got rose-colored glasses on. I just think you had an audio failure, and it kept happening. It happened at weird times. So yeah, it is one of those things of like, hey, this is a pretty professional deal. Can't we get mics to work? And then sometimes the messengers that are at the line that on this amendment, had the person that had been in line actually made a motion for extending time due to the mic failure, that would have passed. And unfortunately, the people get flustered and they aren't thinking through Robert's rules. But there had been another occasion where they had added time because of this. And in order to get more debate on this issue, I think that would have been helpful, because this did get pushed through pretty quick. I don't like the call to question stuff where we're having debate on some significant stuff, even on the law amendment. There was actually a young lady that came forward and said, if you want women pastors in your churches, go join the United Methodists. They will welcome you with open arms. And it was kind of this jab, which it was funny, but generally maybe inappropriate. But then she called the
unhelpful necessarily, yeah.
I mean, but it got a laugh, right? But she called the question. I'm like, why not let this go a little bit, get back and forth? We're changing the Constitution here. I don't want to call the question 7 minutes early. And a lot of them, they're just, people are there to get in and get out, and so you call a question and it always gets closed. And I think that's an unfortunate issue sometimes. But we could have had time extended on this if the person that had the mic had done a point of order. But it was also strategically late in the day at the end of the convention. Those are the kind of things that I do think that stuff happens. So anyway, yeah.
Well, so the big thing I was going to say is, this is what I've seen, and this is, I always have to, you always have to take this with a grain of salt when you start reading the Twitter world right after some of this stuff. But there were some who had written out and said, look, you can actually see that this was the campaign all along. This is what we wanted, and it comes down to, where is it? It's I remember seeing a post from somebody who had said something like, I'm a woman, but I want to be a chaplain in the armed services, and I want to go be, I want to be one through the Southern Baptist Convention, but now I'm not going to be able to, right? And then you've got people who would kind of put forward who are in that group or who had voiced concern that this is what we want to do. We need to go do the study group that are liking that, right? So recognizing some people are saying, see, it's already been fixed, that this is exactly where they want to end up. And that's why they presented this amendment, is that they want to get to a point where we are a little bit more, that we kind of undo what we had just set there. So I don't know. Like I said, you and I both said, and you just affirmed this, that at the end of the day, some clarity should be given. But it seems like that clarity is being given already from that bylaw, the change that we're voting on. But yeah, I look, if that team has good people on it, that we can say, yeah, like legitimately, there's some strong advocates on both sides to figure this out, and it at least showed that this was not a deck that was stacked. Then I think it might have a chance of at least being listened to. But right now, I think there's a lot of skepticism because it was tried to push through last year, and here we are again. So I'm not ready to make a judgment either way on what's going to happen. My hope is that we put some good people on, and we let that unfold, and we keep up with what we're moving forward to Indianapolis, which is to kind of pass what the convention already said is, yeah, let's put this bylaw change in and keep it. Anyways, yeah, that's it. We'll see what happens next year. So do they have till next year they have to come back by next convention, show us something?
Right. And make recommendations. And again, I don't think that making recommendations, you can make a recommendation just to not change anything. And I think that basically the way Al Mohler kind of approached it last year, that's what I would suggest, is say we looked at it. But if there's helpful ways, and it takes some really thinking through the issues on this. I haven't spent a lot of time of how do you bring clarity to this. We don't want an inquisition. We don't want to have to address this. You commission missionaries on one day and you kick churches out the next. That's not a really fun convention. So hopefully churches will have the integrity to say, okay, the Baptists mean what they say about their confessional statement, so we're going to leave. We'll probably lose churches this year. It's not going to be a surprise to me, but we'll know who stands with us. And God bless the ones that disagree. And it's not a hateful thing. But now the weirdest thing then that happened was, in light of this, we believe the pastors for males, someone made an amendment to the Baptist Faith and Message to change the word pastor in the Baptist Faith and Message to say pastor/elder/overseer. We had already passed a resolution affirming this, but they called the vote and a majority vote happened, and we amended the Baptist Faith and Message from the floor of the convention hall with a simple majority vote. And I think someone called the question on it. I don't think there was any debate. It was the craziest event. I did not know that you could amend the Baptist Faith and Message from the floor. In fact, I pulled it up this morning for this, and it says just that. It has been amended, and then there's a note underneath it. This article is amended June 14th, 2023 by the action of the Southern Baptist Convention. And so there's a lot of concern now saying, well, what if someone wanted to amend it in a different way? And they got people fired up one year because an issue was targeted, and you could change it again. So I think that you're going to see motions made next year to make it more difficult to amend our confessional statement, which I thought was basically locked until we had opened up a whole committee and, you bring in your best of your best, because it's been about every 4 years that we make a change to the Baptist Faith and Message. So that was a shock to a lot of us, just in terms of a policy issue, that this was possible.
Okay, so let me just speak on that real quick, because every Wednesday we've been teaching on Baptist Faith and Message. And when we say that we have changed things, we have never undone any doctrine when we've done Baptist Faith and Message changes. So, and I'll say maybe one of the reasons why this amendment passed so easily on the floor is, like, if you go and look at like, what does the 1925 Baptist Faith and Message say? What does even the 1963 one, so 1925 Baptist Faith and Message, it said its scriptural officers are bishops or elders and deacons. The wording was updated in 63 to offices are pastors and deacons. And so what this has essentially done is it's not rewritten anything. It's actually now just kind of reflected 63 and 25 together to say we're talking about the same thing here, that we're not doing. And actually, as a guy who has a plurality of elders, I actually really appreciate that this is in here now. Is it just to recognize that, like, that we see these as the same term. We see this as speaking about the same thing. So I think for a little bit of context for that is there's already history where that was there. And once again, Baptist Faith and Message, we've never gone back to retweet things. We've clarified things. And so this is but it is shocking that we could do that so quickly, because I saw a tweet about that and said, yeah, hey, here the new wording's already in. And I thought, wait, when did that happen? We have to do 2 years to change the bylaws. We can just like that on a Baptist Faith and Message thing. So luckily nothing was done.
Right. Yeah.
But,
so
yeah.
Yeah, Baptists have always believed, Southern Baptists have always believed that there is one office of pastor, and it's either, in some contexts it's called overseer, in some contexts it's called elder. So this isn't surprising. It goes to Peter, where all three terms are used of the same office. And so, yeah, this is not a bad change. It reflects, both the old, more popular language was elder, bishop in 1925, pastor became the more common use term in 1963, and it's kind of carried on. But when you ended up, now elders are kind of making a comeback, and you have Rick Warren elect women elders, and then you can have people who are saying, well, they're elders, they're not the pastor. Now it's like, okay, now we're playing these words against each other when we believe they're the same thing. And so, I think it's the right change. It's not wrong. It was just concerning how easy it was. So that took place. I do think you're going to see some language introduced to make it more difficult to change this again, so that we don't end up with all these amendment asterisks on future Baptist Faith and Messages. It shouldn't become the new resolutions location. The last thing that I wanted to talk about is the Sexual Abuse Task Force. It has been at work. That was a pretty substantial issue last year. And they've spent a year there. The biggest issue in this is are we doing the right things? And when you get into the details of it, I think that I was on the side that viewed our approach as maybe the wrong approach, because I think it opens us to a lot of litigation. However, I'm sympathetic to the way we went. The committee had run into issues with Guidepost, who is the company that we had used, because they promote a sexual ethic that is against what Southern Baptist view. And so they've run into hurdles throughout the year. They're no longer using Guidepost solutions, which is a good thing. They have created a resource kit for churches, and they're building the website to put names of convicted or confessed individuals who have confessed to sexual abuse. The issue going on is if someone is credibly accused, which is a legal term, should they be on the list? And the argument is that they need to be on the list if this is going to have really any major helpful impact. But they don't have the list yet. So they've built the website, but the list isn't there. The Sexual Abuse Committee came forward and asked for another year to continue their work. And that was overwhelmingly approved. We've started down this course. I voted in favor of that because I didn't know if it was the right approach on the front end, but I think it's the wrong approach to quit halfway at this point. I think we need to give them a year to work through it again. And of course, we'll have to see what they come up with. So that's still a sticky issue. Yeah. The news came out and said, hey, they didn't do anything in a year. Baptists don't really care. That's completely not true. It's just we're trying to do it right in a way to protect people from false accusations, as well as to protect our children and women in our churches. It is far safer to be in a Southern Baptist church than it is to be in a public school in America. And so all of this garbage that's come from the media that we don't care is baloney. We have investigated ourselves. We've created a solution ourselves, and we are continuing to work that solution in a responsible way. And so that took place.
Well, and from what I've read on it, it is one of the things that they're trying to take seriously, that there's not slanderous allegations that could be used to ruin someone's career, that there has to be some real evidence or really strong allegations that are there of things that would happen. So I'm hopeful from what I've read of where they're at and what they're trying to do, that they're really not, they're trying not to just create something out of a knee-jerk reaction to something that had taken place. And so I hope that it's a useful tool in the future, so that churches can avoid maybe some of the traps, or hiring somebody in the future who is a serial person, who maybe has not done anything and that's the hard part, right? It's like they've maybe it's not done necessarily something illegal, but there's accusations of their and I don't know, like all of those things, but it seems like they're trying to do it to where it matters to churches, and it's not just slanderous. We'll throw anything that sticks to wreck somebody's career. So hopefully.
Yeah, and just from the floor, the case for the extension, one of the things they made clear is that someone who's abused oftentimes doesn't come forward, and by the time they come forward, the number of years in order to prosecute have expired, and so a lot of times you don't get a conviction because of the shame and the embarrassment that takes place as a result of this. And when someone comes forward, it's kind of late, but their courage in coming forward lets other people who had the same experience come forward, and you find out that, oh my gosh, we've got a problem here. And so you can't just trust the conviction if the laws have the years have expired where it can be prosecuted.
Yeah.
So that's a real issue. Again, how do you deal with it? I don't know, but that's a real issue. On the other side, someone from the floor that was against this said that their church was put on the executive committee list for an individual who had been convicted, but he was at home doing things on the internet. He was not in any role at the church. He actually had volunteered to help, but none of this was known by the church, and none of it happened at the church. And the church had its own policies that protected their people. This guy didn't have any influence in the church.
Yeah.
Again, this is testimony. I don't know the whole story, but this is what was given. And the executive committee, they said, can you take our name off the list? Because we've had people visiting our church who see our church on the list because some guy had come 10 years ago and had been a member of the church, and he had been guilty of things at home on the internet. So their church is now being flagged as a dangerous church.
Yeah.
And people are not coming, and no one has any idea how many people now won't visit that church. And that was that's a real issue right there.
It's true.
We want to reach people who are terrible, evil sinners. They're going to come to our church and get saved. And so we can't necessarily flag all of our churches because a sinner shows up and we find out that they had done things in their past. So one of the things that they did say about this list is that they won't have church affiliation listed. It'll just be a list of names. And so again, that came as a result of real issues in trying to deal with this in such a way that doesn't hamstring a church, doesn't hurt men of integrity who are falsely accused. Again, Potiphar's wife is in the Bible. and so I'm grateful that they have not moved so swiftly to finish it within a year, that they do something irresponsible. Yeah. And so they were granted another year.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like, and I know of churches where they have said, as a result of all this stuff, that somebody had called and said, yeah, like one of the guys that used to be employed here 20 plus years ago did some things, and I've never felt comfortable to talk about these things until this stuff has kind of brought back this. And when you hear the story about that, you're like, yeah, there was some weirdness about that individual that did happen, and now there's more. So so it's like, but and so I understand that they don't want people just to be able to say, I screwed up here, I did a lot of, I messed up, and the church dealt with me, and now I'm just going to go hop to a different state, to another church, and be able to continue what I've always done, and no one will ever know, right? Because I'm just going to give you my best references, and they're all going to sing my praises and stuff like that. So I get that. I just hope that, we don't create a monster out of this anyways, in trying to keep churches safe and people safe too.
Yeah, and one of the things that was released is there is a list of resources and questions that you can be asking to prepare your church. And this is helpful. It's supplemental to what local associations and state conventions have already been doing in order to help our churches do well. So when you read a news article saying the Baptists still haven't done anything about this, that's completely false. It has been a focus of every state convention and every local association to try to figure out a way to put good policies in, the right kind of background checks in order to protect our children and women in particular, even young men, but protect people from predators and those that would do harm. So things are happening. That's continuing work, and so that's kind of it took a little while, but that is the SBC in a nutshell.
Yeah.
So
I'm hopeful. I think I'm excited to be in Indianapolis next year when it happens. I think if I will say this, if you're go to a Baptist church and you're concerned about the direction of our convention, then you need to go to convention. And so whether your church has ever had presence or not, every Baptist church can send messengers. Now, there's a level of how many you can send based on your size and membership and giving. But there's it's something that churches should take advantage of. And so if you have not built that into your budget and you want to go and maybe you would like the church to send, then you should ask in your budget process, can we set money aside so that we can send messengers to the convention? So I think every Baptist church should go. It's been sad that you hear about the glory days when there was representation, and now they've been dropping off. Now this was a better attended one than last year, and I'm assuming this is going to be another well attended one because there's a lot on the table that's not done yet, and it's kind of kicking the can down the road. We've got some work to do, so you should go. We need to be there, and maybe we can do one of these live in a year while we're there.
I think it'd be a lot of fun.
We could make our own fake booth that we can look like we're part of or just sit at like one of the other booths and pretend like we belong to them.
If your church would like to sponsor a booth for OTXNT, we'd be happy to have that.
Otherwise, we'll sit in front of Otherwise, we'll sit in front of Gateway because they know us and like us since we put so much money into going there, and we'll sit and make it look like we're just having coffee, but film ourselves as part of the Gateway booth and. We'll just have to put a disclaimer that does not reflect the views of Gateway Seminary.
By the way, if you're considering seminary, go to Gateway. It's great. We're big fans.
We love Gateway Seminary. Yeah, I have yet to put any of my stuff on my walls yet. I need to put them up. They're in a corner. My diplomas from Gateway, but
yeah, I'd spin my deal around. I got mine up here. So, but they're on the wall through the screen here.
Well, I will say this. I feel like Gateway, especially going through the doctoral program, has equipped us to go through and to think through these things and to really be able to kind of get to where we're at. It was because of what they challenged us to do at seminary. And I would say we had professors that were not in the same field as, they challenged us, right? That was part of it. We're not spoon-fed, but we were made to work through these issues. And this is where we've come out, So I appreciate Gateway for sure.
Yeah. So, and again, on their note, one of the announcements they had is that they've received funding to support any student who's got 20 credit hours towards a degree program to go overseas on a mission trip as part of their educational experience. So they didn't have that when I was a student, but that's kind of cool. They're wanting every student to have a chance to go overseas on a missions trip, and they've now got funding to subsidize that for students that do 20 hours. So I thought that was really cool. And so there's another plug. But yeah, I'm proud to be part of the SBC, and I thought the messengers came through in a great way this year.
Yep. Yeah. Well, that's good news. Well, hey, we're looking forward to doing some more topics this year. If you've got questions, please like and subscribe. We should say at the beginning of every video, but this helps with this and the reach here. But tell us what you want to talk about. If there's any other questions you have, maybe about this that Andrew can answer because he was there, or if there's stuff that maybe is connected to all of this that you want us to work through. Because part of the reason we do this is for our own people. Is not just because we a lot of times there is no avenue for this necessarily on a Sunday morning, but we can do this here and take an hour to kind of work through these issues and to talk through it. But that's all I got for now. And I know I gotta turn to the next thing, and I know you do too, man. So I appreciate you taking some time today to just kind of bring us up to speed.
Yeah, I'm glad we had some technical issues, but we got it all worked out. So you want to close this out?
Let's do it, man. Hey, here we go. Let's close. May the Lord bless you and protect you. May the Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. May the Lord look with favor on you and give you peace. Hey, God bless you guys. Thanks for watching. And hey, we'll see you at the next one.
All right. Take care.